walking the awakening path.
I am so grateful you are here. Today we are sharing sacred space with incredible Ronnell, founder of the Sacred Flow Living. Ronnell is a geo-love healer, sound healing facilitator, and a future book writer. Grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and join us as we dive deep into Ronnell's awakening journey and the wisdom she has to share with us. Welcome, Ronnell.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Ronnell, can you take us back to the beginning of your awakening journey?
Yes, I can. I'm going to take you back. I'm going to completely date myself here, but it was back in the 80s. Okay. The 80s. Like, I'll totally date myself. It was like 1985, maybe. Okay. So, I had a rough start in life, right? A rough start, rough household, rough whatever, as many people do. And one event, like the boyfriend I had, like broke up with me, told me I was a hot mess and broke up with me, right? So I was literally like crashing on a friend's couch till I figured out what I was gonna do. Like that's where I was living, on her couch. And I was like, I'm done. I had to be like, it was either 19 or 20. I don't even know. But I'm sitting there, and then you're going to crack up. The Oprah Winfrey Show came on, right? And this back in the 80s, and Oprah's like, you can create your life, right? And I'm laying there on the couch. I'm like, what? Right? And so I'm listening to this episode of Oprah Winfrey, and this is when she started on her kick, right? And you can transform your life, your reality can change. And for some reason, I mean, I've heard stuff before, but I was like, what? So I sat up and I listened to the episode, and it was like, I didn't know what it was, but now I know it was like an awakening. I was like, because that grabbed my attention. Like I can turn all this around, right? So I listened to that. And then from then on, I go to the spiritual bookstore. And back then you had to like go to the bookstore and buy them. And right. So I bought like a bunch of books. Actually, I have them. I reordered them now, God knows how many years later. But it was like opening the channeling, listening to your higher self. Now, this was a very long time ago, right? So I'm reading all these things, and um time goes by, and then, to fast forward, I had created at the time, like physical weird stuff. Like, I had like planner's warts on my feet. I don't know how it happened, whatever, but I was so transfixed on what do you mean I could heal my life, right? And naturally, now that I'm thinking about it now, naturally, my thoughts when I was that young were, well, why can't I fix this? Right? Right. So I went on this little kick of like talking to the cells in my body and la 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 la. I don't know. Months later, everything disappeared. Right. So I healed it. Right. Then I end up back on the Oprah Winfrey Show because she was doing a segment on. I lived in Chicago, and that's where the home base was for Oprah. And she was doing some segment on natural healing, and I went. She's like talking to me, and I'm talking about what I healed and how I did it, and la 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 la. That was really funny. So I'm already out of high school. I'm on this pilgrimage now to like figure out the secrets of the universe. And I'm like, I'm going to go to California, right? So me and a friend went to California for the sole intention of figuring out how the world works, right? So we ended up getting Reiki certified for free by this Reiki master because we found her. We ended up staying on an ashram in the Sierra Nevadas, right? With the founder of Rebirthing. So it was like one thing after another. So things just kept happening, right? And way back then, there wasn't this very public discussion about spirituality, right? So I don't know. Somehow I stepped into going on this pilgrimage about finding out everything I could. So what I did years of rebirthing. I stayed on an ashram. But meanwhile I was waitressing for my day job, right? So it was pretty funny. Spent a couple of years in California, did all that, and then I was like, well, I want to know about the American Indians because they're like part of the sacred land. So I will move to New Mexico. Again, I financed my adventures waitressing, but so now we're talking like, I don't know, 5 years later, 6 years later, and I don't know, have you ever heard of the hugging saint Amma?
No. Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. So I was in a tent way back when with Amma because some friends invited us. I was in a tent with Amma, the hugging saint, when her gatherings used to be like 25 people. Now they're millions, but they were like 25 people. So, of course, if anyone has ever experienced Amma the hugging saint, you need one hug and she, whatever, takes away your
Yes.
karma, all the ultimate love. So, yeah, I was in New Mexico. I got
I've
a hug
heard,
from,
yes, I've heard that even she's in the hotel, the whole hotel like can feel the energy,
oh, I,
even after she's gone.
yes. So here I am in a little tent with 25 other people chanting, singing, hugging, dancing for like hours with Amma, right? So that was whatever that did, that like probably blew my socks off, right? Because like a year later, I'm like, oh, and then meanwhile, of course, I was waitressing. So we rented this up and things would happen. Like I didn't have a car, right? You, you're that young and you're working, you don't make a ton of money. Things would happen like, oh, there's this program called Walking Man's Dream where you can get a car, right? So, I got this like piece of crap car, but that enabled me to go to the hot springs and sit in the hot springs on the weekend and meditate, right? So that was a whole adventure. We did that for like a year. I lived in an apartment community, right? And we dug up the pavers because I wanted to build fire pits, right? So we dig up the pavers, and every night we would burn fires, burn sage, throw our negativity into the fire. Now, this is a very long time ago, right? And then during the day, we would cover it back up so nobody noticed, right? So I guess and I did it with a really close friend of mine, right? And so I guess our pilgrimage was just to learn everything we could, right? So we did that. I mean, once it started in my 20s, it never stopped. It kept going. But, it was very long, it was a long time period. But um, I'd always managed to meet the founders of things, right? Like I met Sandra Ray in California, right? I studied with the founder of rebirthing, like weird, miraculous, like how could I find that? I could never find that, right? But I just kept rolling in it with it because I had no direction back then.
Well, I guess you were being guided exactly where you're supposed to be and meet those people. They were
You're, it,
available to you. You were on their frequency.
yeah. And I didn't even know what frequency was at that time because back then, these words, the teachings, they didn't exist. You know what I mean? It was there, but it didn't have a name. You know what I'm saying? So, by day I would work, by nights and weekends I would, go on vision quests in the mountains and do all these things, right? But I just kept going, right? I don't know where it would take me, what I would do, but I kept going. And then after like a year and a half, I'm like, okay, what's next? And it's exactly what you said. I didn't know at the time that it was my guides and even though I knew about them, I was focused on other things. But it was like, okay, now go to Hawaii and learn about the ancient Hawaiians. So I sold everything I had. My friend and I hopped on a plane and went to Hawaii, right? And the same thing. I got a job on like the cruise ship because you supposedly make a lot of money, right? And that funded my like adventures, right? So I like completely delved into the Hawaiian culture and Pele and all of that stuff, right? So, and I did that for 5 years, right? So, I mean, and then I would, go to sleep at night and read my books and do my stuff. So I was doing life, to survive, but I was on a quest, I guess, but it was for a very long time, which these days people don't have to do, right? Because like I said, the resources, those programs, it wasn't one of those. I mean, it wasn't programs available online because that wasn't the thing, right?
But
And
you, yes, but at the same time, you are a proof that whatever is meant will always find us.
and you're absolutely right, and it's like you you kind of don't, or I didn't really understand it till after the fact, years later, but everything's a culmination, right? But now that we're talking about it, it's like, holy shit, that's right, right? I did this and I did this. And it's like, so never, I guess, don't question yourself because you don't know. You know what I'm saying? And so then what happened after that? Oh, and then I was like, oh, I got to get a real job in real life. So I moved back. I moved back to Chicago, and that's where I met my first husband. I'm like, okay, I got to have a job. I got to get married. But my shit never stopped, right? I was, married. I had kids. I had a job. But the blessing in that was I was able to bring up, raise my two kids with my beliefs, right? Like my ex-husband at the time would call it my hobby, right? Your little hobby, right? But I was like getting certified, there's a million modalities, but to me they're all the same thing. Call it whatever you want. But I was getting certified and all this stuff, and then I, go to my kid's soccer game, and but when I I think I am so blessed that they're 18 and 20 now, but their whole life they knew me as me, right? Like, honey, no, visualize that cut as healing. You know what I'm saying? So that was cool, and I think now as the time goes on, I'm seeing the big picture, but everybody has a different purpose, right? So I don't dare compare myself, like, well, she went so fast, right? Mine took 40 years. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't know. So I mean, all that happened. And in the meantime, what's funny is as I was like working in that, a really good I used to go when I was pregnant with both of my kids to get cranial sacral, like every week when I was pregnant with each one of them. And this wonderful healer, Venezuelan healer woman. My God, I learned so much from her. She was incredible. You know, we I learned a lot of geometry healing from her. It was called something else, but the things were the same. And then I used to go to her massage therapy place, and she'd let me use the room, and I would do guided meditations with people, right? And I would put my hands on them, and they'd be like, oh my God, this feeling, right? So here's me sitting there going, yeah, I don't know what this is, but this really works on them. I don't know what to call it. Do I call it Reiki? What do I? So I just called it like energy, smooth out your energy. So I used to do that on the side, right at night, like have the guided meditations and play whatever I had, little drums and wind chimes and, you know, do guided meditation. So that was cool, right? And then what am I missing? Oh, and then my kids grew up, and then and then I got divorced, and then, it's the path, man, right? I mean, I was married for 24 years, but I knew that that was just not where I was meant to be, right? right? So
Yeah, I think along the way we all have some lessons to go with some people. And
so much to it. Like just what you said, that's a whole world in itself per experience, right? It's like, okay, I had to experience this, and they're such big lessons, right? But I am seeing the big picture because of what that taught me, why I was in it. How can I help other people with that experience? Because
yeah,
if you haven't lived it, you can't help on that level. It's my takeaway from that whole experience. You know what
and
I'm
I guess
saying?
I already cannot wait to read the book, Ronnell,
I
because
mean,
it's gonna be.
I've been putting it off for years, but there was a moment like 2 years ago. I mean, in my whole life, everyone's like, "You should write a book. You should write a book." Because if it happened, I did it. If it happened, I experienced it. But there was always, like you talk about it. I keep hearing like, that your guides and that talking to you. Well, yeah, it was them all along who was like, "Go here, go there, go there," right? And it is my firm belief that I don't care how you package it or how you go through it. I'm seeing the humongous scope of how each person contributes what they need to contribute, right? And there's millions of people who, need some guidance sometimes, right? So I sit back and I'm like, okay, now I see why. It's just a crazy ride. What's coming next? What I mean? Because I could look back 10 years ago, 15 years ago and go, oh my God, right? But I guess I have no words for that because as you were talking and as I'm talking, I'm like, holy cow, you know? And it's crazy. And I mean, and that's why I like our little community of people because there are so many things that I constantly learn from everybody, right? And and these people show up, and it's just I think it's awesome.
It's incredible how, you know, you have so much courage in you. You just follow exactly what you want, what you are being guided to do, and then everything unfolds from there. So trusting your gut and your inner calling was a huge part of your awakening.
Yeah, I mean, and to this day,
Yeah.
that's what I have to do because it's like, what's the alternative? And I'll hear it, and I'll be like, what? Right?
Yeah. So exactly. So Ronelle, do you have like exactly like those like little nuggets, synchronicities or signs that are showing up and you know exactly what to do at that time?
When the big ones show up, the important, well, they're all important, but the major ones, the major shift, right? Those ones, I'll hear them, I'll know, yeah, undeniable, and I'll do it, right? I tend to have a problem with the tiny little things, right?
Mm.
Unless
Gentle whispers.
yeah, I'm not gentle. Like don't gentle whisper because I won't hear it, right? So this has been so helpful through our conversation here. It's like, well, that's exactly what was happening, right? If it was a long time ago, you tend to forget. If you hear it, you got to do it, right? Even though, and I say that because I've lived it, right? You just do it because case it'll be screaming at me unless I make a move. And sometimes they come a little slower, like I'll hear it, I'll know it, la, 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 but then it gets cranked up.
How did your perspective on life change over those like many years?
My perspective shifted to some kind of awareness that, yeah, if you as a person wanna pursue and connect and be a big part of that, you gotta listen, right? right? And it goes back to, I never mentioned this part, but I was like, I had to be like 7 or 8. And I can remember it so clearly. Uh, my parents were divorced. We were living in the city with my mom. Wasn't great. And I can distinctly remember sitting in the or standing in the alley. They had alleys in the city. And I was talking to God. I was talking to God since I was 7. And I remember sitting there and I had this moment where I was talking to God and I go, there's got to be more to life than this, right?
For
And
7 years old,
I
that's a
was 7.
huge,
I was
very,
very independent at 7 because I had a single mom. We had to take care of ourselves, and you know what I'm saying. And I don't know how. Maybe it happened because I went to Catholic school. I don't know because I hooked into a relationship with God at a very early age. But I remember, yeah, I was 7 and I was talking to God and I'm like, this can't be it. There's like blind spots in your journey where you're just doing what you're doing. But I think my perspective is like, you just listen, just listen and it really happens. You know what I'm saying? And not that it might not happen the way you want it, but it happens the way God wants it. I really got that lesson, you know. It took a long time, but I got that lesson.
there's so much wisdom in that. Ronnell, what about, so, because you have so many gifts, can you share with us like the very unique one that you have? I know it's hard to talk about our own gifts, but you have a really unique gift with not only healings, but with the drawing, the
Oh,
symbols.
yes, 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 yes. Funny you say that. Hold on, here I have an example. All right, keep it here. Okay, so
If
yes,
it's
thank
okay
you.
for you to share.
Yes, of course. You reminding me because I forgot, and it's sitting right here. So over the last couple of years, and and I couldn't really figure it out because it was kind of natural and it always happened, but I couldn't put my finger on it or put words into it. But my whole life, like when I communicated or talked to people, I guess it was that I could read them energetically and I would get information. I mean, I don't know what it's talking about, but I did, right? I'd share. So over the last like 3 years, I really got that, I'd be talking or I'd just say I'd be doing healings on people and I would get the information loud and clear, but I couldn't always articulate it. So I would just draw the pictures that I saw, and then I would send the pictures to the people, and I guess they were energetically time stamped because the people would receive either it's a picture or I'd mail it, and they knew exactly what it was. This must be what I do. So, all right, so I keep these sketchbooks here, right? Like here's one, this is me, but I would draw whatever I was getting. So here was one I was doing on myself. It's like, so,
Hearty.
and it's very cartoony because I can't draw. So the pictures I would get, whether it's a symbol or a something, I would kind of communicate it in these little cartoon drawings.
Yeah.
But evidently, like, here's one, here's one. I would capture the main component or the message, and then I guess there it was, right? So here's one. And this is funny. This is in 2023 in August. So it was an archangel, and the archangel was like sending out healing energy. So I drew like the person with the energy coming down from the archangel with the words of what was being transmitted, because it's the only thing I knew to do. So I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you say you don't know how to draw?
No, they're like cartoons. I'd be like, I'm so
Beautiful.
sorry, but I'm just gonna say I want to try and find a colorful one. Sometimes I color them. Actually, oh my God, this is so funny. So this is the one where I got the vision in the picture and it became the logo for business.
Beautiful.
I mean, not exactly, but the
Yeah, similar.
concept. So it's things like that. So that's what would happen. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously this is a thing. I'm not making it up because everyone I share it with gets it, right? And so, whether it be me doing a healing and then I get a picture of the physical healing for the person, I would draw what that is. And then I would tell them to just periodically look at the picture because they'll get the energy from it. And they do. So yeah, so that's a thing.
This is a huge gift, and I think there is also opportunity, like what comes to mind, that you can maybe also, tune in and download some books
That's
like
that's the
this
perfect
type.
perfect word. Yeah, because these are downloads, right? That's what I'm getting, and that's when I draw it. And I know because I've had it happen, like I'll be driving and I'll get the downloads, right? A lot of stuff happens when I'm like driving my car, right? I used to do healings on myself while I was driving. So they'd be downloads about a book, chapters in the book, and I'd hear words and sentences, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't have time right now. I can't, right? So yeah, that's seems to be a thing that works for me.
That is very unique gift, and yes, and I think if you have that gift, you have to also use it maybe on a bigger scale.
I think you're right. Yes. That's unfolding too. So
Of course. Yes. Ronnell, can I ask you, how did your relationship with others change as you stepped into this? I mean, you are so long in the awakening journey, but did you notice how you approach people and how people approach you?
I think especially in the last 3 years, it got more pronounced where I really understood because a lot of times, our our self-talk, our programming takes over and that's how you interact with people. But I mean the last couple of years, I mean, something happened, where I am certain about what I get, who I am, right? And that was just probably all part of the process, part of the journey, right? But I did notice, I mean, people want to hear what I have to say. I don't have to convince them. I don't even bother convincing, them. I I noticed that my acceptance of like everybody. I don't care what they've done to me. I don't care how they've treated me. That's a big one. So that's a big one. My view or the way I see other people is so different, right? I look at them as the same as me, the same as everybody else. Like, okay, they might be at the beginning of their journey of seeing who they are, and that's how they're communicating, but they're no different than me, none, right? So that's a huge one. That was a big change, right?
Thank you so much for sharing this, the huge awareness. And it means that your heart is so open from a different, understanding that we are all connected and that each of us has our, lessons and our own point of view. But to zoom out, that's a huge kind of approach.
Yeah, I mean it's a big one. I think it's a big one for everybody because in your process, in your journey, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I guess you learn because it's part of your journey, right? But to me, I'm so thankful, right? That you know to be able to do that. I think is just like the biggest blessing because believe me, there were times in my life where I was not like that. right?
So what helped you actually to come to this, to this point of view, to find peace and understanding, like, yeah, to open your heart?
Honestly, I think what tied it all together was the geo love healing stuff, right? I It was always there, but it didn't tie it all together, right? Like an understanding happened, right? Because sure, we can all do a lot of things and be on a path and do stuff, but I think there's always a big moment with people where it all makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Or you integrate it, right? The lessons were always there, right? But there's usually some deciding factor for everybody, like, it could be this for someone, it could be this for someone else. But for me, it was the all the geo love healings, right? Here's a good way to put it. It's it tied together everything I've done in my life because I piece parted it. I did this, I did that, I did this, but that for me tied it all together.
Of course, it means that all we are all working on ourselves, and when we do the work, we start to understand more and put things together.
Yeah. So that was a big one. I'm glad you brought that up. Right.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing.
I'm excited because I have made, like you, so many great connections, right? I
Yes.
mean, that it's like an invaluable, endless, grateful resource because did I 5 years ago have friends and people like this who I could just be me and share and talk and it's real? No, right? And so now I'm like, I am so lucky. I am so lucky because there's so many people who go through life and they don't have that, right?
Yes, and oh, I have goosebumps. And I think exactly because we are like average of the 5 people we spend most time with. And if we
Hmm.
have that beautiful soul family that understand us, that support and bring us up, like, not going down with the spiral, but going up toward the expansion, the growth.
And I always think of this as like, you know, something could go wrong, something could go on. I'm not going to call my sister. I'm not gonna call, my friend. I want to call the people I'm connected to because we're all searching for the same thing, like the ultimate connection, right? I sit there sometimes lately and go, oh my God, I was so blessed. I was so lucky to be able to do that. Because if that didn't happen, like when I started all the geo stuff, if that moment in time didn't happen, I would have never had that opportunity, you know? So it might not have been a great moment in time, but oh my God, look what it provided, you know? So you always got to look for that, right? It's that one thing they say, okay, in the terrible times, look for the blessing is like no truer statement was ever made.
You can maybe, yeah, share a little bit of your biggest challenge and how did you get through that?
Okay, here, it's like kind of a broad picture, but it encompasses a lot. 2 years, last couple of years. I had made a choice or intention. I don't know what I wanted to create, right? And to the normal layperson, it was like ridiculously impossible, right? Like a pipe dream, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. And you talk about self talk, fear, doubt, absolutely crazy, right? Like, here in my mind, here I am intending, to, do X, but it would be to me it was like an impossibility, but knowing what I know, I'm like, no, I know it's not impossible, right? I gotta get rid of, peel back, love, all these things that are counter to that. But crazy incredible things happened, right? Like crazy. they're you know, I'm still living where I'm living, and like to the outsider, I mean, there are people who are like, "How do you live there?" And I'm like, "I don't know, God, I don't know." Things come up, I started a business, right, with my husband, and we're talking no no money, no resources, no nothing, to jump to, we have a functioning business that's doing well. And and these are, for me, those things, these last couple of years, those hurdles, those things were not the big things that I, Ronnell, am now today, because all right, that happened. Chapter in my book about the miracles that happen with that, right? When I say miracles, you'll read about it, miracles, right? And so now, but getting to the point is, I went back to the things I know. When the fear came up, and the fear was fierce and furious, just buckle down to the things that I know, right? This is in my head. This is fear. Where's this coming from? I just strip it back. It's like, take the tools and use them, right? Again, my theme seems to be, because there is no alternative. It seemed to be an all or nothing thing, right? So take the leap, because you have to, right? And so, you know, I, incredible things have happened in the last year and a half, and miraculous things. So currently, now that, like, literally weeks ago, okay, that's done, accomplished. Now I'm like, how you were saying, okay, how can I, Ronnell? Now it's time, I think. How do I serve other people, right? Write the book, write the damn book, right? Like, what excuse do I have left, right? Am I terrified? Yes. Are all these things coming up? Yes. But dear God, I just spent the last 2.5 years learning the most incredible things. So and plus I have an amazing support system of people to help me through it, right? And so now this segment of time seems to be like my turn, right? I mean, it sounds selfish, but I guess it is, right?
Of course, follow what your heart wants to is calling you. And especially, Ronnell, you have such a beautiful, inspiring stories. Like from the beginning, like 7 years old, asking such a huge question, and then, taking a leap and just having the courage to follow your dreams. And even the 5 years in Hawaii, the sacred land where,
Uh-huh.
all the
And that is some
activations.
powerful stuff, I tell you. I mean, I just knew that I had to, but the power there is crazy, right? Crazy strong, because it's like, it's untouched, mostly nature, right? So it's raw, and my God, Pele, and you know the the spirit angels there, and things are. It was intense, right? So I don't know. I'll know when I know, but yeah, it was been a wild ride.
Beautiful. So, Ronelle, if someone is going through a really hard awakening time, what advice would you give them?
And I know what that answer is, right? Because I've done it a million times, right? The answer is, I mean, go to your heart, right? The answers are in your heart. Yes, we get distracted by fear and questions and the noise in our head, but the answer is right here. I don't care how you do it, right? If it's a feeling you're trying to reach, if it's uh an inspiration, or anything, like, safety is here. The safety is here, right? So I don't know, I'm getting emotional talking about it, because I'm like, oh my God, yeah, right? And I've told people this, and it's it's really hard to sometimes for me to, you're interacting with someone, you know where they're at, and you really want to find the right word. That's where my pictures come in handy. You really want to find the right words to, like, no, this is real, this is something, and all that stuff out there, no, 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 you can flip that, right? So for me, seriously, it's just go here. I don't care if you sit in front of a fire and do it. I don't care if you burn incense for 3 days and do it. I don't care what you got to do, but it's there, right? Not nobody is devoid of it, right? It may be buried. You might need to go find it, but it's there, right?
I love
So
that. Thank you, Ronnell. Exactly.
yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
go inside our home. It's where, yeah, all the answers are in there. So thank you so much for
And
your
that's
time.
so cliche because you read it in books all the time, but it's like a real thing. Thank you for taking me down memory lane. This has been fantastic.
I could listen to you like forever. I love your stories. This
Thank
is
you. I mean, if you're really asking, like, it's mere intention, and they'll show up.
at the
It'll
right
show
time.
up, right? Because, like, I
Yeah.
didn't say, "Oh, I want to go meet Louise Hay." I didn't say that, right? I was like reading her books, and then all of a sudden, this was when I was in California, and all of a sudden one day, she was hosting a small, intimate thing, and they happened to have tickets, and I went, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm talking Louise Hay," right? So it's intent. I guess the moral of my story is you can do anything if it's God's will for you and your
Yeah.
path, and it will show up,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you. So just to have the trust, whatever life brings, not to not to spiral down, but to spiral up and have trust that this is for the highest good and something good is going to come, even with the hardest lessons.
That's so true. That's like seems to be a soul lesson of mine. Trust, 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 and that can be a challenging one. That could be so challenging, right? But just keep trusting. Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ronnell. Ronnell, can you share how people can connect with you and yes, and what you can offer?
Well, I mean, I'm a master energy healer, so I can offer that. you know, uh, I I don't know. It seems to be I connect with people, and it just takes a life of its own, whatever that may be.
Yeah,
Right? If you just want to talk and see where it goes, I mean, I don't have all my ducks in a row right now professionally. And that's what I'm working on now. Trust, trust, trust. Right? Uh, Right now, Facebook Messenger is
there you
great.
go. There anything else on your mind that you would like to share or
No, the only thing I want to share is it was so great to talk to you. We haven't done this in so long.
Now, I can speak to you for hours and that wouldn't be even enough. But thank you so much for your beautiful words, lots of wisdom, for sharing this space and your light with us. Uh, we wish you all the best on your path, and we are looking forward to read your book. So have a great baking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, all the informations how to connect with Ronnell gonna be posted under this video. Please follow. Have a beautiful rest of the day with lots of love.
Thank you.